Well, good morning. It is April the 7th, 2025, and straight from the Highly Caffeinated Studio, this is According to Willie B., and I, Will Bryce, am your host for the next half hour. So I have to apologize because I made a major faux pas today. And when I say major, for me, it's major because for somehow another, I did not hit the launch button for today's podcast to go out on Monday. Now, if you remember, originally we did podcast launch on Wednesday. I changed it to Monday because we have listeners from 3 other countries, and it just made more sense due to time zones to launch on Monday and launch at midnight. So, my apologies. So, all the major announcements I have for today, I'm going to push to the end of the show so that we can just jump right into it. I appreciate each and every one of my listeners. I will do my very level best not to let this major faux pas happen again. However, I am human, so there's that. All right, so let's get into it. We're just going to jump right in. And this week, I am taking you on a nostalgic trip. Now, you know me and nostalgia. It's almost like me and wings, right? I mean, I could just roll in the sauce. So, almost the same thing with nostalgia. I can just roll right into the nostalgia. So, the trip that I want to tell you about, the trip that I want to kind of mentally take you along, is to Mount Airy, North Carolina. Now, the thing about nostalgia for me, if you think about shows like The Andy Griffith Show, I Love Lucy, the list goes on, right? Gilligan's Island. I mean, come on. So these are some classics. Carol Burnett, that's the one I was trying to think of. So Carol Burnett and all these other shows, they could bring entertainment. I mean, they could bring it. But they could make us laugh literally till our sides hurt and never, I'm going to put a little asterisk there, because they would never make any kind of innuendos or, any kind of thing like that they do in Hollywood now. However, as we get older and we start watching these episodes, you're like, wait a minute. How did I miss that innuendo or that inside joke when I was growing up? And we have to know that our parents were cringing in the corner going, oh, please don't let them pick up on what they're saying. Well, we didn't, and it wasn't because some of you are going, well, we were naive. Come on now. Were we? No, we just didn't have cell phones to record the stupid stuff that we did. So we weren't naive. We were just good at hiding it because there wasn't cell phones to record everything that we did. So let's be honest. I love the nostalgia of the old shows. So to be able to go to a town like Mount Airy and kind of visit the nostalgia of the Andy Griffith Show, one of my favorite things that Barney Fife, Don Knotts, ever said on the show was, and I'm guilty of saying this on a fairly regular basis, as something would be going too far. I'm sorry. I'm trying to not laugh through this whole episode, but thinking about it makes me fun. It makes me laugh. But it was the fact that Barney would say, nip it in the bud. Just nip it in the bud. And that was the funniest thing to me. And I say that to my boss today. He'll start saying something and I'll be like, just nip it in the bud. In other words, I don't want to hear anymore. So, there's that. But I love the nostalgia because you guys know, from listening to me regular that I love when I talk about nostalgia. I love going places that bring out nostalgia. So this has been one of my favorite trips to go and take. A little weekend trip, but to go and experience Mount Airy, or AKA as we knew, Mount Pilot, was just like really cool. So they had, of course, they had Floyd's Barbershop, there's pictures on. If you've never been, and you love Andy Griffith Show, you gotta go. There's pictures all over the wall, all kind of memorabilia, all kind of news articles and clippings and stuff out of magazines. It's so cool. It's almost like you were actually in Floyd's Barbershop. Same thing with they got a replica of the courthouse, a replica of the jail. I will say that the Mount Airy Visitor Center does a phenomenal job at bringing the town to life. If you've never been, or even if you have been, the first stop I recommend is going into the visitor center, talking with them for a few minutes, and getting some brochures and stuff, and then set out on your way, because they're going to set the stage for your enjoyment. I kid you not. I'm normally not one that will go to a visitor center. I'm like, yeah, I can handle it from here. I drove here. I got this. But I assure you, if you go, whether you've been before or not, go to the visitor center, listen to everything they have to say, pick up the brochures, etc., 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 and then head out and enjoy the day on the town. So when we were there, they had some local, I believe it was all gentlemen, and they all had guitars of varying sizes, shapes, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know all those. Look, if you want to talk about musical instruments, I play the kazoo. So if there's ever a band that wants to form and they need a kazoo player, call me. Because I still got my kazoo, and I can still rock that kazoo. So you give me a call. I'll be ready. But, they had, some banjos and guitars, et cetera, et cetera. Mountain dulcimer. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but you get a lot of string. And so they put on a show right there on the square. And it was a beautiful day. And so it was so cool to just sit there and listen to a bunch of just random people from around playing music. And there's like, hey, this one? Da, 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 and off they would go. And I thought, that's just so cool. I would be so lost, but hey, unless they need somebody to talk. If they need somebody to talk, hey, I raise my hand. I'm there for them. So when you're in Mount Airy, so let's say you get hungry, because I'm going to talk about food a little bit. I'm probably going to talk more about the things to do on this one than the food. And I know you're shocked, but Mount Airy was just so cool and nostalgia. And I know I've said that, and I'm probably going to keep saying it. Maybe I give a reward for how many times I say it. I don't know. But like there was Aunt Bee's barbecue. And that was really cool. It was kind of a lot of nostalgia. They had a lot of memorabilia, etc. And so that was cool to eat at Aunt Bee's barbecue. But they have different stores, like there's Opie's candy store. I mean, you kind of see the theme. They kind of had something somewhere in town surrounding each of the characters of the show. And I just thought there was a Barney's Cafe. How could you not have Mount Airy and not have Barney's Cafe? Now, whether they had more than one bullet, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. There's the historic Earl Theater. Extremely cool. I thought that was really neat. So I'm actually going to shock you on one. Believe it or not, I'm about to shock you. So there is a museum. Yes, I said museum, and I know I said I don't like museums. But this was the Andy Griffith Museum. So, hey, you got to go check that out. It's like $10 per adults, I'm sure it takes them at least that much just to keep the museum up and pay, the employees, the staff to keep the museum going. But the Andy Griffith Museum, if you're going to ever do a museum, that's a museum to go check out. That was really cool. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Didn't think I would because it had the word, museum in there. And yes, I remember my promise. Moving forward, I will always check out museums for those that like museums, because I don't want another scathing email telling me that there are listeners that like museums. I'm like, okay, I get it. So, definitely check out that museum. Now, there is another Mount Airy Museum. We did not make it to that one. I apologize. But I did make it to the Andy Griffith Museum, and it was absolutely cool. I would go back. I would actually go back to that museum and see it again. It was just a lot of, it's not just nostalgia. It's a lot of memories. And, I'm not at the age where I grew up watching Andy Griffith first runs. I mean, I grew up watching the reruns. And because we were limited on channels, well, we just treated them like they were first run. Actually, I when I think back on it, what TV shows did we have that were ours? We were borrowing TV shows from other genres, and I don't know that we had our. We had the A-Team, we had Dallas, we have Knots Landing, but I mean, come on, those were nighttime soap operas. Not the A-Team. That's a whole different category. And I was dearly definitely a A-Team fan. I don't think I ever missed a single episode. And even though my dad would sit there and make fun, saying that they used up thousands of dollars of ammunition and never hit anything, going back and watching reruns, he was correct. Nevertheless, we liked it. But, so you've got all the different stores and stuff. There is a squad car tour. I think they have, I think it's 3, but I know there's 2 of the squad cars, and they will take you on a tour around town in one of the old replica squad cars. That's really cool. The day we were there, it was really crowded, and we had put our name on the list, but never we had left town by the time our name would have came up. So we didn't get to make it that time. So I do hope to make it back to that and do that again. We had ventured over after we left Mount Airy. We had spent an entire day in Mount Airy because the store is just full of shops, little boutique type shops, candy stores, just souvenir shops, trinkets, etc., etc., etc. But really cool. You could definitely spend, an entire day in Mount Airy, or at least we did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and would so go back in a heartbeat. I can almost promise you there'll be another trip planned or unplanned this summer. We ventured over to Bristol. So I'm I'm gonna tell you a little story. This is not quite as bad as the bathroom story in France, but it's pretty darn close. It's the reason that my wife now makes me kind of stay a little more to the planned side of trips. She likes to be spontaneous when it comes to trips, but this trip kind of taught us a lesson to not have at least part of the trip planned, such as AKA hotel rooms. This is the one that I mentioned a while back where, yes, yours truly did not plan anything and did not understand the, what should we call it? The attraction of the Bristol Motor Speedway. And when there is a race in town, good luck on getting a room anywhere between California and Florida. I'm not kidding when I say that. It was absolutely insane. We drove around until about, I believe it was around 3:30 a.m. And I finally found a hotel, and I'm like, do you have anything? Somebody's got to be checking out by now. And they're like, no, we don't have. I said, then can we just sleep in your parking lot? And she said, sure. So that's what we did. We slept about 4 hours in a car, and it's not that she's never let me live it down, but she has made sure that I at least have checked to make sure there's nothing major going on, so that we can't find a room. In which I totally agree. It was pretty miserable, but it was definitely something that we'll never forget. Kind of like the bathroom story in France. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to podcast number 2, I think it is, and that's the France story. And if you want a good laugh, there's another laugh. And that's the thing about a lot of this stuff on our trips. It's usually at my expense, right? I get mesmerized in the train station in Washington. I get soaked in the bathroom in France. I go without a hotel room, on this trip. So, yeah, trouble seems to find me. I'm not sure how that works, but it does. But so let me tell you about Bristol. Bristol was pretty cool. Nowhere near what the Mount Airy was, but I will tell you that we stayed in the Bristol Hotel downtown, and that was really cool. There was a restaurant in there called Vivian's Table. Oh my goodness, that food! If you ever have, like, if your eyebrows ever have hair that goes awry, go to Vivian's Table, and I guarantee you, your tongue will comb your eyebrows because that food is that good. They had some of the most creative dishes on their menu. Very well. It was. You know what shocked me? I want to tell you what shocked me about it. When you tell me something about food in a hotel, it's almost like food in a casino or food in places like that. I was like, okay, you know what kind of quality of food you're going to get. You would be wrong on this one, like I was. The food at the Bristol Hotel, at the Vivian's Table restaurant in Bristol Hotel, was absolutely phenomenal. They blew me away. I would go so far as to call it a wow experience. The service was on point. The food was very well displayed. It was the plating was creative. The menus, the dishes, the sides, all the way from starters to appetizers, everything just came together. The cleanliness from front door to back door, which is kind of what you would expect at a nice boutique hotel. You would expect that kind of thing, but I think they kind of ramped it up a notch in the Vivian's Table. So my hat is off to Vivian's Table for creating such a wow experience. And I look forward to going back hopefully this summer and having another meal at Vivian's Table because it was absolutely phenomenal. But if you go to Bristol, definitely check them out. And of course, you got Hard Rock Casino over there, and they have the Yard House. But see, that's where I took a detour. Now, I have my favorite pork burger from Steak River Farms at the Yard House, not to mention the 4-foot tall beer. But I gave up going to the Yard House to go to Vivian's Table because Vivian's Table wasn't a national chain. And I was not disappointed. So just always understand that if I have a choice between going somewhere that is a mom and pop type, even if it's just as long as it's a local owned and it's not a major national chain, I'm going to forego the national chain 100%, regardless of what my favorite is there. One, I just love supporting the local restaurant industry, but I know the kind of food and experience that I'm going to have, and Vivian's Table did not disappoint. There's also a bakery there. If I remember correctly, it was called the Blackbird Bakery. Really cool, really cool. I definitely recommend checking those out. They had had great coffee. They had some great pastries. Oh, and you know me and pastries. Or really, you know me and anything food related, right? Why do you think I run a YouTube show called Culinary Highway? I mean, come on. I like to eat. But that was pretty much the bulk of that trip. But, I knew that this could be an entire podcast just talking about Mount Airy. Because I love the nostalgia tied to those old shows because they made us laugh in ways that we don't have in these times. You can turn on TV. We've got so many choices between all these streaming devices, et cetera, et cetera. If you got an internet signal, man, you can stream just about anything. But the old shows, Carol Burnett and Andy Griffith, et cetera, they bring back so many memories. They bring back a time that we just don't have in these days. And those of you that know what I'm talking about, you agree with me 100%. We just don't have that kind of humor anymore. But that pretty much wraps up this week's episode. Like I said, I pushed all my announcements to the end because I wanted to dive right into the episode so that, if you got something else going on, you can tune out or tune back in, whatever you like to do. But I do have a couple of announcements. So one is on merch. So everybody had been waiting for some T-shirts, etc. And I did set up a store in Etsy and went through a third-party thing called Printify. Now, a lot of people swear by Printify, and maybe it works for some people. But I ordered a shirt from Printify, and I was absolutely flabbergasted at the quality. And I'm like, there's no way that I can charge that kind of money for a T-shirt of that poor quality. Not going to do it. I'd just rather not have it. So now we are revamping the whole process. We are buying our own gear and we're going to print our own T-shirts. Or we're going to, within time, print our own coffee mugs and hats. That's the three things I see getting started. And they will be listed on our website, according to WillieB.com. So you'll be able to find the merch right there on our website, and you won't have to pay all the extra charges for the third-party stuff. The second thing that will allow us to do is we'll be able to have some T-shirt promos. So we were really excited when we kind of put our heads together and thought about, it's like, hey, if we did it this way, we might have to wait a couple more weeks, but we'd be able to do some T-shirt promos, and so we were excited about that to get some merch in you guys' hands. The other thing is, if you haven't checked out Culinary Highway yet, I urge you, I'm telling you, we are already 3 episodes deep. The 3rd episode launches this Wednesday, and we are already booked for the next 3 months. I'm going to tell you folks, I am speechless when I tell you that I'm on, episode 12 of this podcast, and we have regular listeners in 3 different countries. I am absolutely humbled when I tell you that we are booked 3 months ahead on this Culinary Highway venture. It is unreal to me. People ask me all the time, and I get caught up on my words when I try to talk about this. People ask me all the time, it's like, well, what's this or what's that? And I said, look, let me tell you something. I started out day one on this podcast, and I always heard the phrase, dance like nobody's watching. Well, let me tell you about that one. Don't do that. Because I've seen me dance, and no thank you. So there's that. We're not going to talk about that either. But my thought process is, if they say dance like nobody's watching, podcast like nobody's listening. If you're going to have a video show on YouTube, film like nobody's watching. But yet, every time I check the analytics, every time I check all the stats, They are listening. They are watching. And I cannot tell you how much it's appreciated. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you. I cannot fathom that this would ever taken off like it did. But if you haven't checked out Culinary Highway, it's on our YouTube channel. Go check it out. You can find the link to Culinary Highway on our webpage, accordingtowillieb.com. Everything that comes from the highly caffeinated studio will be on our website. So that is what I have for this week. I've kept you longer. Well, maybe not. We still cut it up under that 30 minutes. So, that's what happens when I don't butcher words. It's what happens when I don't go down rabbit holes. Lord, I can tell you, I can go down some rabbit holes, as most of y'all know. But, hey, for this week, I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. I hope each and one of you have forgiven me for my faux pas of not hitting that launch button this morning. And until next week, I promise I'll be on time. I hope you will too. And I look forward to seeing, or not seeing you, but yeah, you kind of see you in my imagination, if you will. Let's go with that. All right. So until next week, don't forget to caffeinate and conquer. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.